Hello. This video is an overview of how integrations of various kinds can be set up with the PMcardio for Organizations platform. This video was recorded on the 2nd of October 2024, so the platform may have slightly changed between now and when you are watching this, but the general idea should be relatively similar and the same. In this video, I want to give you a good intuition for how integrations with the PMcardio for Organizations platform work, and we're actually going to build one during this video. So, first let's demystify integration and APIs a little bit. I'm now logged in to the PM Hospital tenant, so I'm at pmhospital.pmcardio.com, and I see a lot of data. I see reports, I see some of the administrative settings, and I can click around in this user interface. I can open up the team section, I can go back to the reports section, I can open up a particular report. And the thing is, as I'm doing this web interface is in the background calling an API of the PMcardio for Organizations platform. This is how front and back end communication works. And integrating with the platform itself is simply the act of calling these API endpoints programmatically from the integration that you're building. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move this platform to the side like that, and I'm going to open a new window. And in this new window, I'm going to open the same URL that I have up here. You can do this with your own tenant as well, and erase everything all the way up to just the .com at the end of the URL. And at the end, attach API/docs. And if you open this website, you're going to see an interactive documentation page for all the API endpoints of the platform. Every time I click something in the user interface, the web platform is calling one of these endpoints. So just as I clicked the Reports tab here, what actually happened in the background is if I scroll down here to the Get ECGs endpoint and I open it up, I can do the exact same thing using this interactive documentation page as I did in the front end. So if I click the Try Out button and I click Execute, I will get a response. And that response contains the same data that is displayed in the platform, but in machine-readable text. So you can see that there's a list of reports here, and the first report is report 3F1DEC. And if you look here, you will see that that is actually the first report that I'm seeing in the user interface. What this means is that anything you can achieve by clicking around in the user interface, you can also achieve programmatically using an integration. So for example, if I was to click this report and open it up, I get all the data pertaining to that report. And in the API, I can do the same thing. I can take the ECG ID, I can copy that, I can close the report listing endpoint, and I can open the endpoint that fetches a particular EKG. And I can try that one out, place the ECG ID in here, and click Execute. And I get the same data as I can see in the user interface. In fact, I get a lot of data here. I see the created time, the updated time of the ECG, I see who created it, I can see the OMI prediction along with the medical device identification information, the value, the OMI prediction, signal itself, the URL to the signal, and a lot more. As one final example, I want to show you how you can create new EKGs. So if you go into the New Reports tab, you see this form. If I go into the Post ECG photo endpoint over here, I have the same options as I have in the web interface, and I can click Try Out now. And you'll see that the inputs to this API are almost identical. They are actually identical to the inputs on the web interface. So I can select the photo, I will select this image, I can do the same thing on the API and select the same image. I set the paper speed and voltage gain, I set the patient ID, though that is of course optional, and I can click Get Results. And in here I can also click Execute. And in the response I get the ECG report name, I get the patient number, the ECG ID, and so on. And if I go to the report list now, I will see that there are two new ECGs. Both were created just now by me. One of them was created through the web interface, one of them was created directly through the API. So that's all well and good. Now you probably have some intuition for how the API works, and you would be able to play around with it in this interactive API documentation page But let's actually use it programmatically. Let's actually build a very small integration. Well, first thing, you'll notice that if you say fetch the list of reports, and I'm going to fetch that right now, get ECGs, and I will click execute. I will get the data, yes, and you will also see this up here. It is a curl command. It is a command that you can execute on the terminal, which achieves the same thing. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to move out of the browser and into the terminal. Let's start building an integration, right? I will paste that in here, and if I run this, it will actually fail. It will fail because it's not an authorized request. So why is that? Well, you see, what I've been doing here is I've been using the web interface, which is pmhospital.pmcardio.com, and I've been using the interactive documentation page, also pmhospital.pmcardio.com. And the authentication is done using a cookie. So the website on the right, the interactive page, was using the fact that I'm already logged in as the user. So you'll see it is coming up as created by me because it was me that created it. However, if I was to take this URL and open an incognito tab and paste the URL in, trying to do the same thing from the incognito tab, trying to fetch the list of reports, will fail with the exact same authentication error, unauthorized, because I'm no longer logged in. So, how do you authenticate? How do you actually create the integration? How do you get an API key? That is what we're looking for. Well, you'll notice that in the platform, if you're an administrator, you will have these administrative options. I'm going to close this one. I don't need that one anymore. I'll keep the incognito tab one. You can see all these options, and you can see that in the team section, you have a list of users. And if you open any one of the users, you will see that user's permissions. They have an email, they have a name, and they have a whole bunch of permissions as well as a selected location within which their ECGs are created. Charles, for example, is working in the intensive care location, and we have multiple locations on this platform. One of them is the emergency department. That's where I am working, along with an example user called Alice. And if I go to the reports, I can see that there's an emergency department section, and there I can see my reports, and I can also see Alice's reports. So suppose I wanted to create an integration that adds EKGs into this emergency department location. The way you do this is you create what's called a service account. Service accounts are very similar to users, with the exception that they don't have an email. They don't log in at all. In fact, they are only accessible via an API key. And what I can do is I can create a new service account, and I'm going to call it example integration. I will give it regular member permissions. I will give it the ability to view the EKGs in its location. I will allow it to create ECGs, and I will assign it to the emergency department. That's where I want it to be creating the new ECGs. And I will hit create service account. Now the service account is created. I can open it up, and down at the bottom you will see this section with API keys, and I will create a new API key. I can give it a simple name, example key for demo, and you can add a description here of your choice. This is a very useful field in case you're creating longer term API keys so people know where you're going to use them. I highly encourage you to fill this out. I am not going to fill it out because I'm going to have a very short-lived API key of just 7 days. Your API keys are probably going to be longer lived. They will last, say, about a year, maybe a couple of months, depending on what you need. I'm just making a demo now, so 7 days is enough. I'm going to click Create API Key. And there's my API key. I can click this button here to copy it, and now I can start using this API key. I can now go to the interface on the right, the one that doesn't work. Remember, if I click Execute, it's going to say unauthorized. You can't get any EKGs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to authorize it now. See this button here, authorize. If you click it on the interactive documentation page, you can paste the token in here, and you can click authorize like that. Now once that is done, I can go back to the Get ECGs section, and I can try doing it again. And now you'll see that I do actually get the response. I get a response which contains no data, because the service account hasn't created any ECGs yet. That's expected, but it is a response. If there were any ECGs, it would be fetching them. What's more is now the curl command, the example command you can use in the terminal, also contains a header with the API key. It is an authorization header, and the bearer token is the API key. If I copy this command, I can actually exit the browser, go into a terminal, paste that in, and I will get the result that I see in the interactive documentation page. Now at this point, all the power of the integration is available to you through a single HTTP header. Not just the listing of reports, but all of the API endpoints in here. So let's try some of them out. You'll notice that if I go down here, I can now create an EKG, and I can create it from a photo, much like I do in the user interface. But suppose I don't want to create it from a photo. Suppose I have digital EKGs in my hospital system, and I want those EKGs to appear in the PMcardio for Organizations platform. Well, for that, there is the second endpoint down here, post ECG signal. And this endpoint does not require an image to create an EKG in the PMcardio platform. All it requires is a digital signal. And if I click the Try It Out button, it's not going to give me the option to select an image. It will give me the option to put in a digital signal. So what is this format? This is a JSON format, and the signal is simply a sequence of numbers. This is a very short template, but I have prepared an actual signal that our platform accepts right here. I'm going to full screen this so you can see it. This is the sort of content that you need to send in order for a digital ECG to be added. It is a simple signal object with some predefined values. You need to tell the system that this is a digital signal. There are no rhythm leads in a digital signal. The patient ID is of course optional. And the lead data is simply a list of leads where there is a predefined version of the lead object for backwards compatibility for your integration. There's a lead name that distinguishes which lead it is, going from 1, 2, 3, AVR, AVL, AVF, all the way to the precordial leads V1 to V6. There is an offset field, which is always 0 for digital ECGs. There's also a sampling frequency, which tells you how many of the signal samples represent a single second of the ECG. And finally, there is the signal itself, which is a sequence of numbers. It's a list. These numbers are floating point numbers, and the units in which they are millivolts. This is very important. These are not microvolts, these are not volts, these are specifically millivolt values. You will notice that this format does not contain any patient information. If I scroll all the way to the top, there is nothing here about the patient's name, about the doctor, about the time at which this EKG was taken. None of that information is required for the PMcardio platform to operate properly. So what most of our clients opt to do is they filter out patient data, remove it from whatever EKGs they have in their hospital system. They create this sort of signal object, this JSON object, and they send this through the API into the platform to create ECGs without sending any of the private or personal data of the patient to our platform. So let's do that right now. Let's create an EKG on the platform through the integration, and let's use this signal to do it. I can just take this, I can copy it, and I can simply paste it in here. And I can do execute. And just like that, the report has been created. It is report 695666160. And if I now go into the web platform and I go to the reports, in the emergency room, you will see there's a new report up here. It is created by the example integration, no longer by me, but by the integration itself. I can open that report up and I will see the signal that we input. So we're very close to having a functioning integration, but we are still using the interactive documentation page. So let's move this command into the terminal. Let's actually execute this command without the use of a browser at all. You'll notice that there's a lot of data here because the way the interactive page does it, it is actually places the content, the data of the request into the curl request. But I'm going to filter that out in a little bit. If we go in here, I can adjust this request ever so slightly, and I can remove this data and I can put a file there in its place. So you'll see this is a curl command, and I am in the folder that contains the signal.json file. So what I can simply do is I can post the signal.json file into the request. So this is the finished curl request, the URL endpoint, the API ECG from Signal. We are putting in the authorization token. We are setting a content type, and we are setting the data to be the content of the signal.json file that we saw earlier. That's this file that we copied. So now if I run this curl command from the folder in which the signal.json is, I will create a new EKG on the platform from my terminal. If I list the content of this folder, you see the signal.json is here. Now if I take the request and I paste it into the terminal, you will see that I get a successful response, report name DFF4EC. And if I go to the platform, I will be able to see the report I just created, DFF4EC. These will appear to your users instantaneously. In fact, if I create additional ones in the terminal just now, they will start appearing in the list of reports. Though at the time of recording, it does require the users to navigate to the reports page or click it in another way. So you see we have report A9B2F, A9B2F, and they can appear as the integration is sending them in. The signal.json file that we use to do this will be made available on the website where this video is located. If you're watching this video on a different website or on YouTube somehow, there should be a link in the description below or around this video that leads you to the website where you can see all the files. I will include the signal.json file, I will include the image that we use at the beginning of the video, I will also include the individual curl commands with little placeholders for the tenant name and for the API key. I will include something that looks like this. So there will be a command for creating an EKG from an image, from a signal. I will also include a command for querying EKGs in the system using more complex filters. And in fact, let's build one of these right now. By now you probably understand the flow. Initially, decide what integration you want to build, what it is you want to do with the platform by looking over the user interface, clicking through it, and figuring out what you want. Suppose, I'm going to move this to the side, suppose you want an integration that fetches all occlusive myocardial infarction EKGs from a certain point in time of your choosing. So suppose you want all the EKGs created after October 1st, 5:07 p.m. and you only want those that contain occlusive myocardial infarction. You can achieve something similar in the user interface by clicking Show Only OMI, which means you know it is possible to do the same thing through the API. So let's do that just now. Once you know what you want to do, I recommend you always head to the interactive documentation page and use the available endpoints to craft the request that you need to figure out how to actually do it with the integration. In our case, I want to get a list of reports and I want to edit some of these filters. I want EKGs from the emergency department. And you'll see that I need, for that, an identifier for that location. So one of the things I can do is I know that the service account is creating EKGs in the emergency department. So I can fetch the object of the current user. I can fetch the object of that integration, of the service account itself. And you will see there's a location field, which is the emergency department, and it contains the location ID. I will copy that location ID because that is the location from which I want to fetch EKGs. I'm now going to go back to the querying of ECGs and I will select a filter for location. I will add the location ID in here. I am interested in EKGs created after 5:05 p.m. October 1st, so I can add that as a time filter. This is an ISO 8601 format. That's 2024-October 10-01, it's the 1st of October. Time is 17:05. Actually, I think I'm going to go 17:06 so we get EKGs after this one. 17:06:00, and the time zone in my case is 02:00. The creator is irrelevant. I want the OMI EKGs, and that is my entire filter. If you wanted EKGs from a particular person, you could put that person's ID here, and you could also have time until if you had a specific time window in mind. So you don't want all the EKGs from there, but only EKGs up to a certain point. The format is the same. So let's execute this query. And there we go. I should only be seeing this EKG, 3F1DEC. 3F1DEC is the one we see. We see all the data in here, and you can see that at the end, that's it. It's only one EKG that I have filtered out. And the curl command is a bit more complex right now. It contains the URL, and it also contains all the query parameters that I set up earlier, the ones from up here. If I copy this, I can run that in the terminal as well. And I'm going to place it here, and if I run that, I will get the EKG back. This is again JSON format. It's not as prettily printed as it is printed here, but all the data is still here. You see the report name, 3F1DEC6F, and all the corresponding data of that EKG. So that concludes the integration guide. I have shown you all the commands as these curl commands, but this is an industry standard. So if you are not a technical person and you want to pass this off or pass this video over to your technical team, when they see the curl commands and they understand how the authorization token is placed into the curl command and where the API is located, the URL up here, they will know what to do. From that point on, it's only a matter of turning this curl command and coding it up in whatever language of their choice or whatever language you use at your institution to build integrations with other systems you have. Of course, your data is most likely going to be in HL7 or GE-Muse or FHIR format, which are formats for which we plan on adding additional dedicated endpoints for their ingestion in the future. However, this general integration endpoint, which allows you to post an EKG signal, has proved relatively popular with our customers simply due to the fact that it does not require that you send any user values or any patient information to the server online. But if you are watching this in the near or mid-term future, you will most likely see additional endpoints for ingestion of EKGs in additional formats, either FHIR or HL7 or any other ones. If that is the case, feel free to investigate those endpoints as well. There might also be an additional video available that tells you how to make use of these endpoints. Thank you for your attention. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us. And in the meantime, good luck integrating.